All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. This, of course, is the biggest story that we've been tracking since this afternoon, where according to reports that are emerging in the British media, it is being said that Boris Johnson is likely to tender his resignation by the end of this day. Reports also say that Johnson wants to stay on as the Prime Minister till a new Conservative leader is chosen to lead the government. Now, the Prime Minister has lost almost about a third of his government, and resignations have continued even today. At least about 50 ministers have resigned since Tuesday. And this report about the Prime Minister of Britain stepping down has in fact just come this afternoon in the British media. This was one of the first things that was reported early in the morning as people in Britain woke up. Now remember, the recently appointed Chancellor of the Exchequer, Nadhim Zahawi, in fact, who took office just on Tuesday, has called for Boris Johnson to quit. In a tweet, he told the Prime Minister that the situation is simply untenable and things are likely to get worse. The reports also say that a Conservative leadership contest will take place this summer and a new Prime Minister will be in place to take over the party and the government by October. In the meantime, Mr. Boris Johnson will continue as the Prime Minister. Boris Johnson is expected to give a resignation statement outside of 10 Downing Street in some time from now. Now, it's been a pretty fast-paced political landscape that's changed its colours over the course of the last 48 hours. On Wednesday, Boris Johnson was pretty adamant that he would not resign despite the growing mutiny within his own party ranks. He had said that it would be irresponsible for him to go and that the last thing that the country needed was an election. Here's an exchange between the Prime Minister and a parliamentary committee hearing saying that he has absolutely no intention and no reason to step down as the Prime Minister of Britain.
If you have lost the confidence of your MPs and you're required to step down as leader of the Conservative Party, you will not seek to dissolve Parliament.
Well, I think the last thing this country needs, but I'm not going to step down. And the last thing this country needs, frankly, is election.
On
the contrary, I think the risk is that people continue to focus on this type of thing, and I think that is a mistake. What we need to do is get on with stable...
How would it help the crisis in Ukraine and the cost of living crisis if we were plunged into a general election that nobody wants?
But this is your fancy.
Well,
I think
rule it out. Rule it out.
Of course I rule it out.
You've ruled it out.
The earliest date that I can see for a general election is 2 years from now.
The latest leadership crisis was triggered after Johnson admitted to appointing a lawmaker despite knowing that he'd been accused of sexual misconduct. This is the latest scandal that hit his administration after months of scandals and several other missteps. This also included a pretty damaging report into parties, the lockdown parties that were held inside government buildings that broke COVID-19 lockdown rules. All right, now to give us more insights in terms of how all of this is, of course, playing out in Britain, we're joined in by senior journalist Andrew White, who's joining us live from London. Andrew, this is something that was pretty unexpected in terms of how rapidly things changed, because until yesterday, Boris Johnson was insisting that there is no reason that he saw as to why he had to step down. But one of the first things that we heard this morning from Britain is that he will be stepping down by autumn later this year. And that's pretty much it from Boris Johnson so far as his prime ministership is concerned.
Yes, until late last night, Boris Johnson was absolutely insisting he would stay in office. And this is in spite of a whole string of cabinet ministers, people who are loyal to him personally, going to him one by one and saying, "It is up, Prime Minister, it is time for you to go," because he'd lost the confidence of his own members of Parliament. But this morning at 8:30 London Times, that's 3 hours ago, Boris Johnson met the leader of Conservative backbench MPs and said he had agreed to stand down. And we're expecting Boris Johnson to appear outside 10 Downing Street probably in the next hour or two. And he'll announce that he will stand down as leader of the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party will then elect a new leader, which could take a few weeks. Boris Johnson's own intention is to remain as Prime Minister until a new Conservative Party leader is in place. But there's an increasing chorus of Conservative MPs and former ministers in the last hour or two saying, actually, that is not tenable. Boris Johnson needs to go now, to resign as Conservative Party leader and to resign as Prime Minister, and to do it now. Whether that will happen, I don't know, but certainly his political career is drawing to a close.
Absolutely, indeed. That's an important point that you raised, although he has expressed his intention to stay on as perhaps in a caretaker position till autumn later this year. There is speculation that he may not last till tomorrow morning. Now, at this point of time, Andrew, who is likely to replace Boris Johnson? Is anything being talked about on that front?
Oh, yes, it's being talked about, and it was being talked about before he resigned. In fact, his Attorney General, a member of the cabinet, Suella Braverman, who is of Goan heritage, announced that she would contest for the leadership while she was still in Boris Johnson's cabinet. So she is the first person to announce that she will contest. I think it's likely that as many as 8 or 10 Conservative MPs will contest. A lot of speculation about Rishi Sunak, who resigned as Chancellor of the Exchequer, Finance Minister, on Tuesday evening, and in a sense sparked off that last fatal crisis for Boris Johnson. It's not entirely clear whether he will stand, but the smart money is that he will. And although he had been under a little bit of a cloud politically, the fact that he made the move, he resigned, he pushed Boris Johnson out, he wielded the dagger in political terms, means that he will be a contender. Though I think a lot of Conservative MPs think they may want somebody who is not tainted by serving in Boris Johnson's cabinet. This has been a scandal-prone government, and Boris Johnson's final exit has been deeply, deeply undignified. Yesterday, 10 Downing Street became a bunker where the Prime Minister was digging himself in and refusing to listen to the counsel of his friends and allies. And, at one point, it looked as if he was simply going to refuse to move. Now, he is moving, but with poor grace. And it may be that Conservative MPs will want to find somebody who is new and fresh and untainted, but who I really wouldn't like to say just yet.
Absolutely, indeed. But also, Andrew, I would want you to weigh in on the fact that even if there is a new Prime Minister that's put forth by the Tory party, do you think that would enjoy the confidence of the people, considering the many controversies that the Tories have seen over the course of the tenure of Boris Johnson? Or do you think it is more likely that we could be looking at fresh general elections in Britain?
The way that British politics works, it's unlikely there will be an early general election. The Conservative Party continues to have a commanding majority in Parliament. They won a very convincing victory at the last election in December 2019, led by Boris Johnson, of course. So I think if there is a new Conservative Party leader, my guess is that person, whoever it is, will want a fresh-look government and will try to convince the voters that this is a fresh start. Even if they don't entirely manage that, I think it's very unlikely that there'll be an election in the next 6 months or a year. You can never be sure, but I think it's very unlikely. I think it'll be a new Conservative Prime Minister, but it will be a Conservative government, and the opposition will remain in opposition.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Andrew Whitehead, for joining us and getting us all those insights there from London. This, of course, is the big developing story that we are tracking. 10 Downing Street developments are happening pretty thick and fast. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of Britain, according to reports, because he's yet to make a formal announcement on this, according to reports that have emerged in the British media, has stated that he will, of course, be stepping down. He'd want to stay on as the Prime Minister, as the caretaker Prime Minister, until autumn. But it remains to be seen whether he would, of course, be able to continue till even autumn. This, of course, is the big developing story that we are tracking on WION. And Andrew Whitehead, of course, joined us from London. Thank you very much indeed there, Andrew, for speaking to us. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.